Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ceres Podcast. I'm your host, Stelios. Today, I'm joined by Geoff Whitehead, owner of Whitehead's Fish and Chips in Hornsey and past National Fish and Chip Shop of the Year winner. With nearly 30 years in the trade, Geoff's built his business around one powerful principle: never compromise on quality. From pot washer in his teens to running one of the UK's most respected fish and chip shops, his journey is all about discipline, grit and relentless reinvestment. It's a real pleasure to have Geoff on the podcast again. We're always keen to hear strong opinions and we love to challenge my ideas especially and our ideas. If you want to find out more about Geoff, go back to episode 140 of the Ceres Podcast. I think it was recorded in around January 2024, so not so long ago, and that gives you all of his backstory, which you really won't hear here. So I hope you enjoy this. Speaking of smart business moves, this episode is brought to you by the Ceres Fish Cake Mix. Let me ask you, are you tired of giving away profit because you don't have use for fish trimmings? Are you still boiling potatoes every day just to make fish cakes? Do you want to cut waste and increase margins without cutting corners? Then the Ceres Fish Cake Mix is right up your street. With cod and haddock prices climbing, every ounce counts. Our Ceres Fish Cake Mix helps you turn off-cuts into high-margin, top-quality fish cakes quickly and consistently. You'll portion your fillets perfectly and you'll make the most of what's left. It's miles faster than boiling potatoes and it's built for busy businesses. We've even created tried and tested recipes to get you going. For the finishing touch, use our rustic breadcrumbs. They're made for homemade fish cakes. They won't burn and they look great once cooked. Start boosting your profits today with the Ceres Fish Cake Mix, available now at www.ceres.shop with free mainland UK shipping. And don't forget to join our mailing list for exclusive insights, special offers, competitions and latest industry news. The link that you need is in the show notes. Right, let's dive into today's conversation with Geoff. Morning, Geoff.
Good morning. How are we?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. This is take two of take two.
Yeah, we got there in the end.
Yeah, no, it's one of those, when you've got like a slightly older computer, sometimes it just messes around.
2013 older.
2013 older, yeah.
You don't realise how fast time goes, do you?
Well, and the thing is with Macs, you've got a Mac as well. It's amazing that a 2013 computer can still do your day-to-day things. But when you start getting to, calls like this and so on, everything starts to creak a little bit.
Yeah, well, watching you doing your stuff just then was quite mesmerising, I've got to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm one-fingered Bob, mate.
For those listening, I logged in remotely to your computer, with your permission, I may add.
Yes.
But I have to do that probably to at least two different pod squadders before a pod squad. So I'm fairly...
We're not called dinosaurs for a reason.
I'm not pointing any fingers, but David Miller knows how to accept that request now. Yeah. I remember once. I remember Mark Petru once. He was playing up just before a pod squad, and he goes, "Oh, just log in." So I log in, and I nearly had an epileptic fit looking at his desktop. It was just there was documents open for days. There was about 200 tabs open in his Safari. And
was he using a Sinclair?
Oh, no, he had a Mac as well. No, he had a Mac as well, but he'd not switched it off since he bought it. And he's just got all these tabs open. And I think it's analogous to having a desktop with all your papers available. You've got like my old accountant, bless him, before he passed away. He knew where everything was. He had this huge table.
Organised
chaos. Whereas I have, at the moment, I'll just tell you, I have 4 documents on my desktop and they'll be gone by the end of the week because I start a fresh week. And when I see people's desktop, my wife's is the same, I open her computer to sort something out and I'm just like, oh, But like everyone has their way of doing things, you know.
Yeah, of course they do.
So,
yeah.
But welcome back to the Ceres Podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to be back.
No, it's great to have you. And for listeners that aren't aware of who you are, they can go back to episode 140 and they can listen to all of your history.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed having you on because although I've met you over the years and we've done work together and we do business together, not as much as I'd like, I may add, Geoff. We need more of that.
I'm sure we'll get that.
But I having on the podcast and listen to your history, listen to everyone's history. It's why I do this, is because I get to learn about what people have been through. And like I was saying to you just now before we had to sort of stop for a moment, is I think people are really affected by your enthusiasm. I think it's infectious. It's even when you talk about negative things, you're quite enthusiastic, so that probably throws people to some degree.
I don't do negativity.
No,
I just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
We are on this planet long enough for negativity.
Yeah.
And I'll only have my core. The core people I have in my life have been chosen for a reason, because it's all about positivity.
Yeah.
And if you're negative, then just leave me alone. I'm not interested. I want positive feedback only.
So how do you deal with negative problems with positivity?
With positive attitude. Life throws you a curveball every single day, and you've just got to approach it exactly the same.
I think that's true. And I've got 2 young kids, and I've got I've got a load of nieces and nephews, and I say to them all the time, like, there have been harder times than this. You think this is the hardest time in the world, but it wasn't that long ago that bombs were falling on us, and I wasn't alive and you weren't alive, but people before us were made out of tougher stuff. And and I think
I've been watching the news recently with surveys, would I go to war with for this country, and all these youngsters are saying absolutely not, rah-de. But,
I was listening. I was listening to a podcast about that the other day, and they said there's nothing like a war to make people change their minds pretty fast. They said because they had lots of these surveys just before before the UK entered World War II, and the answers were the same. Why would I go to war? And then all of a sudden it was like,
no choice.
Yeah, no choice. And actually, tougher times make harder people.
Yeah, too right, it does.
I saw this thing the other day. Someone I follow on Twitter, and it might even be a meme, it might be a joke, it might be completely made up. You don't know with social media. And it said something about frivolous arguments in the UK and America. And this old man in Pakistan said, "You're all too rich. You've got nothing better to do." And I think and it might be completely made up. Who knows? But the sentiment is, like, we are a first world country. I know some people really do suffer, but the majority on the whole are doing better than the last generation.
Correct.
And I think that...
Hence the easy times.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting, isn't it? But I get your point about the positivity. I'm probably more... I throw myself, as you know, you're listening to our podcast and the Pod Squads, I throw myself into things a bit more.
Yeah.
But you can tell me where I'm wrong down the line. But for those...
No wrong or right on these podcasts.
No.
It's all about opinions, isn't it?
Yeah,
at the end of the
exactly.
day.
And, I want people to have their opinion regardless of whether they agree with mine. And everyone's allowed to form their own opinion. I don't get off the podcast and email people and text people and force it down their throat,
No, definitely not.
And, many times people will listen to a podcast and they'll text me afterwards and say, "Still, I think you got it wrong." And I'll be like, "Tell me why. Like, let's go through it."
Yeah.
And only the other day, I had one of a customer in Cornwall, friend and customer in Cornwall. And, he said, "I disagree with your stance on something." And I said, "When do you want to come back on to discuss it?" Like,
yeah, exactly.
And he's like, "Oh," and genuinely, like, I don't care. Like, it's opinions. I'm not going to get...
Everybody's entitled to an opinion, whether it be right. Well, there isn't a right and wrong.
Look,
yours is right, theirs is wrong.
Opinions like...
There's no right and wrong.
There's a really crude saying, opinions are like arseholes. Everyone's got one. Yeah? And that's fine. Like, and I just like the challenge of bashing these things out. Like, and if someone still thinks I'm wrong or I think they're wrong, we can agree to disagree and still be friends. Like this what is it? Why does everything have to be so existential? Like,
quite right.
So, but last time you were on, the end of your winning year. So it was Feb 2024, winning year of Fish and Chip Shop Takeaway of the Year, not Sustainability of the Year.
Correct.
Looking back, like, looking back, like, how do you think that the first year of winning, like, how pivotal was that to your business, Geoff?
Well, it increased business by 30% winning that award.
Okay.
Which, if you're not prepared for it, it's one hell of an increase.
Yeah.
It probably took us at the time, I would say, about a month to get used to it. It just overnight. It just no, sorry, I beg your pardon. It took 2 weeks to kick in.
Okay.
And a further 2 weeks to get used to it. Once you get used to it, it's same as anything. It just becomes the norm, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's just you're getting ready.
We haven't. We dictated to by the weather and the location of where we are, because we're a seaside town at the end of the day. So from March to October, we are inundated with caravanners and day trippers. So we just got used to being busy.
See, for me, I've been to your shop many times, and I think what baffled me the first time I came is that, yes, you're in a seaside town, but you're not actually near the seaside, are you?
No.
And
No.
Is it right to say that you're on a parade in a little estate or a larger?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. No, that's correct.
And the good thing is,
you wouldn't expect an award-winning shop being where it is. Definitely not.
It reminds me very much of like the likes of Shea Fred's position in Bournemouth. Yeah, everyone says to me, "Oh, it's all right for him. He's next to the seaside." And yes, on a map from an aerial view, he is right next to the seaside. But when you're on the street, it's actually not very close to the seaside at all.
If you were to walk down to the seafront now, it'd probably take you about 7 or 8 minutes to get there. So we're nowhere near the seafront. We don't have prime location. And at the end of the day, this is what it's all about. You have to compete with the people that have, or shops that have prime location. And if you don't compete, you're going to go out of business. So going back to it, what do you have to do to compete? Serve the best quality product, giving the best service.
Yeah, but even pre-awards, I met you 15 years ago, Geoff. Initially,
yeah, you did, yeah,
and you've been in business.
Don't remind me
of the years, or just meeting me, or the first time you met me. But if you go back to back then, you had the business probably 15 years before then. You were involved with it, I know it was more of a family affair back then, but we were still there. But
yes,
that estate's always been the way it's been. So does that help you having regular custom throughout the year and then the extra custom when it's busy and nice, the weather's nice?
To be fair, the majority of our customers have to drive to get to us. We're not relying on the estate of where we are because it might sound a bit odd, but they don't eat a lot of fish and chips around here. It's mainly we are, there's Hull and Beverley, which is our nearest towns and city, and the majority of our customers come from Beverley and Hull. So I set out all those years ago because obviously we're a seaside town. I didn't want peaks and troughs when it comes to business and being busy. I wanted to make sure that winter was busy and summer was extremely busy. And the only way around that was, as I've already stated, you've got to put on quality food and a really good service to the best of your ability. And I've made it that way, and it's been very difficult but thoroughly enjoyable. Stressful at times as well.
And the good thing is you have quite a bit of parking there as well, which helps around the circle.
Yeah. It helps. Not enough though.
Not enough, obviously.
Yeah, not enough.
Maybe you could always propose that middle bit becoming a car park.
God, I've been doing this for years. They won't let me buy it. They won't let me have a peppercorn rent on it. I said I'd even pay for the car parking to be done, but they're stubborn. You know what councils are like.
Business prevention officers, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
No, it's just interesting. But I think like any good business, it's not an overnight thing, and obviously, but adding 30% to your business isn't insignificant either. That's pretty significant. So then, obviously, after that, we meet up in London for everyone's at the awards. You then win Sustainability of the Year, Sustainable Business,
which is high on my priority list.
Which is always and anyone listening to the last podcast would know that based on your investments and so on. Did you get? Well, let's start with the first one. Did you get as much oomph from that award, or do you think that you were still overshadowed by the previous one?
No, you're overshadowed without a doubt.
Yeah.
It's obviously you get to go on the trip and you do the odd article here and there, but it's nowhere near as you're not going to get anywhere near the amount of business out of winning the sustainability as you do with the takeaway of the year because it's the creme de la creme. It's what everybody wants. It's what it's what everybody should be striving for. It's not as popular.
Yeah,
but it's still a great one to have.
Do you think so? Was there any increase in trade from that, or is that just more an acknowledgement from customers? Do you think
it's probably more of an acknowledgement than anything?
Yeah.
It's very difficult to get away from winning the takeaway of the year.
Yeah, I bet it is. Well, yeah,
because that's what everybody wants,
for good reason.
To know you for.
And for good reason.
Yeah.
Because
it's overshadowed.
Yeah, well, and it would be strange if you'd won the sustainability award and that got more traction than. Yes. That would be very strange.
No, definitely not.
Do you think, like in hindsight, though, a lot of people in our industry would think that that's whether a deluded move, a gutsy move, a crazy move, going for an award straight after winning the big award? Do you feel like that?
Thought of it.
Never crossed your mind.
It was. I didn't. When you're doing an award, this is obviously my opinion. I wanted to focus on one and one only. It takes an awful lot to get to the position you need to be at, not just your business, but obviously when you're entering an award, you've got all this written, you've got all your entry form, your written entry form to do, and I just wanted to focus on one at a time because it zaps an awful lot of energy out of you, as well as running a business, obviously, and I just wanted to give it my all. So rather than doing two, because obviously there's a lot out there that do 2 or 3 per year, I took the option of just doing one at a time.
So you're not hedging your bets, because I think that's why I think what a lot of people do is they'll, like you said, they'll go in for the max amount, which is now 3, and previous to that, when it was sea fish, it was as many as you wanted, pretty much.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And I could see why, because I remember Frankie's in Scotland, because they were saying, "Oh, we're coming from so far away, we want to make sure that we're going to win something." So they'd put themselves down for like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. And I remember they were literally on the day of one year, they were just walking up constantly, like, and you think, bloody hell, like they're getting their steps in today. But but you just think, but you're, in your mind, you just much prefer focusing on the one thing that you truly believe in that suits your business. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want, whatever happened, whether we won the takeaway of the year or not, I was always going to do the sustainability, always, because it's very high on my priority list. I practice what I preach. I don't just write things down on a piece of paper for awards just for the sake of it. I actually practice what I preach because I want to. We're the guardians of this planet, and we need to look after it. And I want to do my bit because at the end of the day, I've got grandkids, and I want to make sure that whatever I leave behind, they then continue and do the right thing for the planet because. Well, it's the right thing to do. What
sort of things have you implemented since then? Like in terms of thinking about sustainability?
As part of winning the award, I'd actually put in there that I wanted to put wind turbines up.
Yeah.
I even went to Amsterdam. No, I didn't go to Amsterdam. I'm lying to you. I went to Holland. I can't remember where it was at. And I visited the factory and I chose the wind turbines, but I had to go through planning permission with the council. Here we go, with the council. And this is where you've got to jump through hoops. And you get everything supplied, all the noise analysis, acoustics, radi, and then you get turned down because you've then got to do a professional. You can't rely on their noise analysis. You've got to go out and pay for another one, and it wasn't cheap. And in the end, I pulled the plug on it because it was ridiculous. Although you want to do the right thing, for now, I've pulled the plug on it.
How many kilowatts would a windmill generate a year, providing?
Well, they look like a tulip.
Okay, I've seen those. Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah, tulip turbines they were called, and
a bit like a corkscrew, aren't they? For those that
yes, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, these were giving out 5 kilowatts because they were 3 meters tall. The ones I wanted, and I wanted 5 of them to go alongside my photovoltaic solar panel. Yeah. Which, I mean, my solar panels at the moment are giving off 10 kilowatts at the moment.
Yeah.
So altogether, it would have given me 35 kilowatt. Is that right? My maths?
25.
25. Yeah. 25 kilowatts. Which, yes, please. Just the solar panels alone are reducing my bills down £650, £700 a month at the moment because the sun's shining. And when the sun's not shining, the wind's blowing. So it would have kept my electric bills down on the shop significantly if I'd have had 25 kilowatt going out.
Yeah.
It would have been brilliant. No, it is 35. 5 5's 35. 25 plus 10.
Oh, sorry.
35.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. So would have been quite.
I would have had very little electric bills at all. If any, they might have owed me.
Was there any local opposition, as in from people? I mean, before you even got
none.
No,
none. No, it was all about the council at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I don't need to remind people about how much you've got to jump through hoops when it comes to the council.
Business prevention officers, as we said.
Yeah.
There'll always be a story why, but it's weird because I thought they'd probably be very pro sustainability goals.
No, they say it.
Oh, okay.
They've got to be seen to be doing, but when push comes to shove, no, it doesn't work like that. Yeah. We all know that.
Yeah, you're probably right.
You only have to look at the news for that. They say one thing and mean another.
Yeah, absolutely. So what else have you managed to do within the business to sort of, if we're looking at sustainability?
So I can remember having a discussion with David Miller when he won the Fish and Chip Award back in 2018. And 18 months after that, I visited him. And I remember him distinctly saying, I haven't rested on my laurels and I want to keep going forward with my business. And it's stuck in my head. And that's exactly what I've done. I won't call it a major refurb because I'm doing it every single year anyway. I upgraded everything at back of house when it came to stainless steel and dishwasher. My dishwasher that I brought in January, it cost £15,000 for this dishwasher, and it circulates the steam back round and it reheats your water for you, reducing your electricity consumption. That was the major benefit of me paying this sort of money. Because at the end of the day, if you can reduce your electric bills, your profit margin goes up. Because at the end of the day, we're a business, are we not? And we need to make a profit. So although the outlay was significant long term, because I always think long term, not short term, it was worth the investment. And I've done that throughout the entire back of house.
So a 15k. I'm just thinking about this for a second. So if you spent 15k on a dishwasher, what would a normal replacement be?
About 5.
Oh, I bet. So it's 10k more.
Yeah.
And what sort of age would you hope? What sort of life cycle would you like to get out of that?
Well, the last one lasted me. It would have probably still be going now. I had it for 5 years, and it had done over 350,000 washes at the time.
Yeah.
It's same as anything. This is the Rolls Royce of dishwashers.
Yeah.
And if you can afford to do it, you do it. It gives you a better wash for a start. So you can see a mile off. It gives you a better wash.
So it's better in itself as well. It's not. Yes. It's not just that it's more efficient.
So I've got a Rolls Royce. You've got a Mini. Which one do you want? That's it. That's the bottom line. I want my business. I want to put Rolls Royce in my business because they are the best.
Yeah.
Whether it be, I'm not going to mention range manufacturers because obviously that's a bit of a major debate between friars.
Yeah, but everyone's allowed their choice.
Yes, they are. But what suits one doesn't necessarily suit another. But I want to make my staff's life easier, and if I can do that, I will. And this dishwasher is a significant improvement on the one I had.
What brand is it? Just out of interest.
It's a Huffhausen.
Okay. So it's weird, isn't it? Because when it comes to ranges, people know what range you got. It doesn't actually matter. You've got two, and but there's this.
Yeah, I've got one of each.
Yeah, you've got one of each. You've sort of got your foot in each camp.
Yes, I have.
But it's always such a contentious issue talking about frying ranges. It's so strange to me.
So when I first brought the two in, I didn't choose either. Okay. No, I'm lying. I didn't choose the takeaway range. I left that to the guys that are frying on it all the time. They chose it. That's what they wanted. Whereas in the back range, which is for my gluten-free only, I specifically chose that because I wanted to see what it was like. And there's very little between the two. Obviously, I will mention who it is. It's Florigo and it's Karemko. And I wanted to see what they were both like. And the characteristics between the two is minimal. There's nothing to choose between either of them, to be fair. They're both built very, very well and they both fry very well. The front Florigo range actually has a data cable attached to it so they can download all the data so they know what's going on. If there's any problems, they can just dial, like what you did to me earlier.
Yeah.
You can dial in and hopefully rectify the problem.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously KFE don't do that. But what advantage one range has over the other, it's minimal. It's minimal. Yeah. So I just thought I'd try them both.
Yeah, I'd never leave a decision like that to staff. Like, we've just been buying ribbon blenders and stuff like that. I'd never be like, hey,
but the difference is these guys have been with me for 15 years plus, and I want them to have a good input into my business because they know it inside out.
Absolutely. I don't think I'm overly concerned about the input. I remember a few years ago when it was just a shop that I was dealing with, and every decision, lovely guy, like if you met him, he's the sweetest man on the planet. And but every decision in his business is a democratic vote. And I say to him, like, sometimes in a business, you need to have that cutoff where it becomes an autocracy, because you're the one that's paying the bills and you need to make decisions. And I know it's not as extreme as that, but this was literally, oh, what do you think of this batter? And like 9 people would all like talk about it. And I just thought, and then it would be like, what do you think about this frying range? Or whatever it was, any large-ish decision that needed any form of change. And I just thought, this is why nothing gets done. It reminded me a little bit of the European Union, to be honest. It's like all 27 member states have to agree. No. And then it was like, well, and then they started to get to a resolution. They'd start compromising. And I'm thinking, now this guy started off with a good idea, and he's now having to compromise. And
the difference is we'd already had I'd had 2 Florigo ranges in the front anyway, so they knew exactly what they were working with.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they didn't particularly want to change. They were quite happy with what they'd got. So, I mean, predominantly the decision was made by me anyway without them realising.
Yeah.
And I knew they would choose it because that's all they were used to.
Yeah, it was a safe space for them.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah. Now, I'm not going to digress too much, but we changed. Obviously, fish prices have got shot up, as we all know, and I put a survey out there regarding cod and haddock and which they prefer, and are they prepared to pay the price? And 50% said yes, they are, and 50% said no, they won't. They'll look for an alternative. So I put an alternative on, but before I did, I went to the guys first and said, right, we're thinking about putting Coley on. What do you think? And there was lots of umming and ahhing going off and toing and froing. And eventually we put Coley on. There is a but to this. The but is the British public are very fickle.
Never.
And because they're fickle, they say, although we have put an alternative on, it's not selling very well, and I knew it wouldn't. They knew it wouldn't, but it's all about perceptions, isn't it? And making sure that we put alternatives on. Coley's definitely not selling very well at all, but in other areas it is. Spoke to the fish merchant, as I do regularly, and in certain areas it's going off the charts, but it's not for me.
I'd argue it's sorry to all the fish merchants out there that are going to listen to this right now, but I've got to have someone else that dislikes me. But I guess it is their job to sell it. Like, yes, I'm not. I like Coley. I like it. I like it. You know, it's give me pollock. Nah, not my thing. Coley, I'd have it. Like, it's fine. Like, is it cod? No. Like, it's not. No. Is it haddock? No. There's a reason why cod is cod and why haddock is haddock.
Yes, agreed.
And it may not seem obvious to a lot of people, but they are premium products because they are sparkling white. They have a very clean flavour. And for the most part, for nearly all the part, very, very little back fat. And for that, it's a very clean, lean flavour. Whereas Coley does have back fat. Pollock, the best I've seen, is dry as Gandhi's flip-flops. Like, honestly, like I don't want to be rude. I know people depend on it at the moment.
You beat me to that.
Yeah, like, I don't think I've had a good piece of frozen pollock. I don't know why. No. I'm happy for anybody to put me right or to show me what they've got. And I was trying these fish in 2006 when I was running my dad's fish and chip shop, 2006, 2007. Then we had the crisis in 2008. I've tried a lot of these fish. I've tried haddock. Obviously, cod and haddock was our staple. I've tried Coley. We tried barramundi. We tried hokey. We tried hake, frozen at sea hake. Fresh hake is a different thing completely. Like, that is stuff is amazing. Like, but I do think, when we're talking about different species, they're not all equal, and there is a reason why they are worth selling for less, and that's because people don't want them as much.
I always say the same thing, and I actually saw this on a cooking program. I think it was James Martin's Saturday Kitchen, and he said exactly what I say. People eat with their eyes, and the British public do. They only eat with their eyes. As soon as we see something different, we don't want to know. It wasn't that long ago we were trying to push mackerel. Am I right?
Yeah.
Well, it's this. We're back to that again. And unfortunately, because we eat with our eyes, and don't get me wrong, I eat mackerel once a week minimum. It's not for everybody.
No.
But we eat with our eyes, and as soon as we see something different, we don't want to know. If you blindfold 10 customers and ask them to do a taste test, there's very little between curly stroke hake and cod, because it is obviously from the cod family.
Yeah.
It's like you say, the curly that we sell is, I always liken it to a salmon. And as soon as you mention salmon, they say, oh yeah, I like salmon. Well, you've got your pink salmon, and then underneath that, where the skin meets the flesh, meets the meat, you've got that little dark layer. What did you call it? Fat?
Back fat, I guess, yeah.
Back fat. Yeah, well, it's got back fat. And as soon as they see it, they don't want to know. It's like, oh, I'm not eating that. But it's equally as nice. If I blindfold you, you wouldn't know the difference between cod and that.
Yeah.
But yet sales are not very good. So...
Well, look, we supply one of James Martin's restaurants in Bournemouth, and they literally just sell cod. And they've tried other species, and they're a restaurant, and they could probably serve anything,
Yes.
But they stick to cod, and because they say that the public are willing to pay for it, they're in a sit-down environment, in that environment, and they want to sell the best that they can. And I do think so I do think introducing other species, I could see how it's worth a try. I've tried it myself. I could see with cod and haddock prices going up, it's definitely worth a try. But I also think having an honest conversation with customers and just saying, this is the price of cod. If you like cod, this is the price of cod. And I think if we didn't remind them so much negatively, that they'd just get on with it anyway.
I actually took it off my takeaway menu for quite a while, and I'm putting it back on because we're having an awful lot of customers that have said, I'm quite happy to pay the price. It's now hit £300 for a box of cod, which I would never, it's absolutely unheard of, is this. I've never seen anything like it. In all the 28 years I've been in business, this is just unheard of. However, if the customers are prepared to pay, then that's fine by me.
I think
so it's going back on.
I genuinely think, and I know I'm going to sound maybe a bit optimistic, but I genuinely think customers get more than we know. We hear this all the time when it's spoken about VAT. Customers don't get it. I think they do. I think all customers get what VAT is. I think they choose to look the other way because it doesn't suit them. I think they know that cod and haddock is the most premium product in terms of seafood. Fish.
Yeah, most people do, yeah.
And I think they know that it isn't the same as panga or coley or hake.
Yes.
Or at least frozen hake, because it's not the same as fresh hake. So I think they know. The fact is, most civilians, everyday people that get a driveway done, talk to the fencer and say, oh, what do you do for cash? They know VAT exists. They know. When the plumber does a job for them, they know. So they also know that fish and chip shops are collecting VAT on behalf of HMRC. They know. They might not know the intricacies, but they know. So
I actually tried tilapia about 3 weeks ago.
A friend of mine's been using that for fish cakes.
It's a farmed fish, and it was let me get this right, I think it was a 6 to 7 ounce fish, and it was just a wetter version of cod. It didn't suit me. It wouldn't suit where we are, but it would suit certain people in certain areas. They may want to give it a try.
In America, and this is why, the Americans are very different to the British. So when it comes to fish, they do like cod and haddock. They're not really bothered where it comes from.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But they're not overly bothered whether it comes from. So it can be, from the Barents Sea, or it can be from their neck of the woods. And they're quite happy with that, from I forgot what it's called now, Alaskan pollock, Alaskan cod, all that. And they're happy with that too. Now, but where they're different is that they actually have a large appetite for white fish. So they're happy to then say, you know what, cod's really expensive. Let's get tilapia. Let's get catfish. because they, if they don't eat bland food, so everything gets very well seasoned, whether it's with, spices or salt and pepper. So it doesn't matter to them, And whereas over here, the British public really are only fascinated with cod and haddock.
Cod and haddock, and that is it.
Yeah, and that is
and
it.
You try put something into the mix, and they're just not interested.
And I think that so maybe it is worth putting something into the mix just initially, so they say, you know what, I'll stick to my cod, thanks, and then it maybe realigns their appreciation, let's say. But I do think for the most part, I saw a shop, I can't remember what it was, somewhere in Northwest, and they took cod off the menu within 3 weeks. They put it back on the menu. I think you can ask customers whatever you want on social media. They'll say whatever. There's a thing called virtue signaling. So what happens is everyone starts seeing comments like, you do what you've got to do. And I'm going to say in this instance, Geoff, you do what you've got to do to protect your business. We'll support you no matter what. And quietly, they just go buy fish and chips from somewhere else that's cod or haddock. So I think customers, they like to virtue signal. They like to make out that they're really, because all their friends are watching them. So they're like, yeah, Geoff, you're Stelios, whoever. You do what you've got to do. You see,
I'm going to put the cat amongst the pigeons here and play devil's advocate.
Go on then.
Frozen at sea or fresh?
What, as in, what's my opinion?
Yep.
I actually don't care.
Which do you prefer?
I actually don't, genuinely. I've had absolutely splendid of both, and I've had absolutely terrible of both. What I like to see is people cook it right, because there is a few differences, between cooking whatever. Now, if we're looking at it from an economic point of view, fresh fish, which we should probably call chilled fish, really.
Chilled, yeah.
That fluctuates daily,
Yes, it does.
You've got to be quite on it. And you're not going to change your prices every day. So you've just got to accept that some days it is the price it is, and other days it's a bit lower. You maybe make up for it at the end of the week or the month. Frozen at sea, on the other hand, even with the increases, is stable in price. You could argue it's been stable one way. But
it was going up a tenner a box weekly.
Yeah,
not that long ago.
So
it's steadied off a bit now, thankfully.
That's a nice linear increase for the guys that are selling it, I guess. And I know they would argue they don't make big money off that, but the boats do, and who knows. But the point is, in terms of quality, like Magpie Cafe in Whitby, they have stuck to chilled, freshly caught, or as freshly as caught as possible fish. They've cut out lots of middlemen to make sure that they can get it as quick as possible. They swear by it. Every product that goes through that restaurant and takeaway is chilled. I'm not sure about prawns and bits like that, but I know for the most part the main things are as fresh as possible. But they are also, unlike you, who is near the seaside, if you were drunk and tripped over, you would literally fall in the water there. So they have a few benefits. But then the fuss goes down the road, are frozen at sea. And
yes.
And they're only 50 meters away from each other, if that. So
yes, they are.
I don't think it needs to be as black and white as what's better, frozen at sea or fresh or chilled.
I mean, you may correct me here, but my statistics are 98% frozen at sea when it comes to fish and chip shops.
Okay.
And 2% fresh. I could be wrong.
I always assumed it was a bit slightly wider. I assumed it was still 90 something and maybe 10 something. But again, no one's showed me any solid statistics. It usually goes on hearsay.
When I first came into this business with my mother, my father came along one particular day because we're uncertain of what to use, fresh or frozen. And he said, right, let's do a taste test. So he sent somebody out to 3 other different shops. He brought theirs back, and he then we fried a frozen fish and also a fresh fish, and we did a taste test. Those other 3 shops were all using chilled fish. So 4 out of the 5 were chilled and 1 was frozen. And myself, my mother, not my father because he knew what they were, and my grandmother at the time, we did the taste test, and every single one of us chose the frozen at sea, and that is why we've always stuck with it. And every time I do bring in fresh, it changes the way we fry, because we end up 3 minutes for a haddock, 4 minutes for a cod is the general rule of thumb. That's frozen at sea. When it comes to chilled, you can add a minute on there for at least a minute, because it's a wetter fish. That freezing process does something to the fish, probably dries it out a little bit more, and you can reduce your time down. So that the knock-on effect of having to fry that extra minute when you've got queues going out the door all day is quite significant.
Yeah.
I just find it a better product.
I'd imagine the science behind that is probably the water in the fillet is expanded, which means it leaves better.
Yeah.
But and that goes to my point, which is what I was writing down as you were saying that. I didn't know where you were going with that. But I think one of the risk factors with FAS is when people massively over defrost it. It's sitting in a tray full of its own water.
Yeah.
And I've been to shops where I've opened the tray and you can feel straight away the momentum in the tray. The water is it's like a lorry full of seed. It's just like, it just keeps coming at you. And
we have a temperature controlled room, what we defrost ours in.
Yeah.
I used to have a fish defrosting fridge, but it couldn't keep up.
Oh, okay.
So I stopped using it. I sold it to a very good friend of mine at Lighthouse Fisheries.
Oh, Gareth.
Mentioned no names.
Sorry, I did.
And he loves it. He absolutely loves it.
Yeah.
But it couldn't keep up with us. So
well, you've expanded your defrost fridge to a defrost room. Okay, yes. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But I do think that's one of the risk factors with frozen at sea anyway, that I've seen many times where, you see, the anomaly is, like, which is really strange, is that fish can sit in its own water but actually still be dry. Yeah.
Yep.
Because it's released all the minerals, it's released all, and then when you lift it, it then picks up far too much pre-dust. It's then wet. It ruins the batter that it gets dipped into.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, there's a fine margin.
Yeah. So, but I think a lot of people think that both of these choices are bulletproof, and there's no such thing. Experience comes into play with whatever you're using, in my opinion. You know, when I see Magpie Cafe, the way they treat and I've mentioned them a lot, and I never really mentioned them, to be honest, but when I've stood there and I've watched them, and the way they treat that fresh product, that chilled product, their cod is so thicker than 32 pluses that I've ever seen.
Yeah,
and that needs managing. That's not an easy product to fry. You know,
no, it's not.
And I won't go into the detail of what they do, because they are experts in their field, like many of you. But I think a lot of people like to boil it down to, well, I use this because it's bulletproof, and I use that because it's bulletproof. Whereas actually, both options have a lot of to and fro and a lot of give and take, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, it's best practice and what works for you.
Yeah,
basically, that's all it is, nothing else. And if it doesn't work, you don't do it.
Yeah.
So
one of the things,
that's why I said,
one of the things I don't like, or at least I'm not a big fan of, down south they do brine a lot of their fish.
Yes,
I don't know if they do that up north a lot, but I've seen it down south.
I've never seen it up north. No. Never.
What I've seen in, like, the Liverpool areas is they'll dry brine, so all their fresh fish gets salted, and they do that in Scotland as well, I think.
Right. Okay.
But and again,
I'm being educated now.
But Liverpool and Scotland are also quite similar in their habits. They like very flavoured food. So, but also, if you're in Scotland, you're using very small angel cut fish, which is a tiny piece of fish with butterfly, for those that don't.
Yeah.
So that does need salting because it won't have a lot of flavour. But down south they do brine their fish in water. They'll defrost it in water with a lot of salt, and I'm not a fan of that, because I think you're letting the minerals out, the natural minerals that exist, only to replace it with salty tap water.
And it does taste salty.
Yeah.
When you're eating it, you can dress it up as much as you like. You're still getting that salt flavour, which is taking away the flavour of the fish.
Yeah, and that's my opinion.
And
others may disagree. Yeah. Whereas, why I like our pre-dust, and this isn't a sell for them, it's because it just seasons the fish nicely from inside out. And whereas I'm not a big fan of, water and fish, and, I know it come from the water, obviously, but in terms of defrosting, I'm just not a big fan. But I've seen people that buy fresh fish chilled fish from Billingsgate Market and then soak it overnight in salty water. I've seen that too. So, I think this is just one of those, maybe like an old wives' tale, maybe, that people have done over the years, in the nicest way possible.
Yeah, we like old wives' tales.
Yeah, no, we do. They make us feel safe and happy. And,
they do.
They don't always work, but they do make us feel safe and happy. I think that's a huge debate, and anybody listening to this on either side of that would be like fresh, and on the other side it would be like, frozen. And why I wanted to make the distinction between fresh and chilled is because fresh isn't always fresh.
No, it's not. And I can vouch for that, because when I first left school, I ended up on my father's fishing boats, and we'd go out on a Saturday night stroke Sunday morning, and sometimes not return until Thursday night. And that very first catch is down that hole for days. Obviously now, as time's gone on, they're away for 10, 12, 14 days at a time. That first catch is down that hole from day 1 and a bit, depending on where they're going. So you've got 13 days of spoilage going off there from that first catch. So how's that fresh?
Yeah. And I think
people may disagree with me, but I've seen it firsthand.
It's one of those words that have just entered the lexicon and stayed there. Google is one of those things.
Yeah.
I'll Google it. Yeah, I don't.
Hence the word chilled.
Yeah, and I think that's why I like to just interject with chilled. And it's not that I'm being pedantic, and I'm not trying to make it sound worse than it is, but it's chilled. And whereas, and I got schooled on that, because for forever almost, I always said fresh. And even now, I have to stop myself. It's a word that's ingrained in my brain, And
then obviously you've got your frozen at sea, which is caught and frozen within 3-4 hours at the most.
Yeah.
And then when you defrost it, it's as fresh as the day it was caught.
Yeah, and there is, obviously, for those listening, and this isn't really a masterclass, but just for those listening, there is a little bit of an in-between, and there's IQF, and then there's IQF that's shore frozen, or land frozen, and then there's other stuff that's done on boat as well. So there is a huge choice here for people to make. So I think there is. It isn't just frozen at sea or chilled. I think there is a middle. I've never really tried a really good IQF product either, if I'm honest, but I'm sure maybe there is. But
yeah, I'm sure there is. I haven't tried one.
No. And also, like, one of the things you see sometimes people put on fish and chip groups, what's this product like? And you see like 30% glazed. How do you make that thing stick? Like well done to them. Like, whoever's invented a way to put that much glaze on it. But one thing I wouldn't like, if I'm being completely honest, is one of the main reasons why I've never really liked Pangasius, and again, I'm sure there's some good ones out there, is that
I'm sure there are.
Yeah, it tastes like the river it came from. Like,
it's not for me.
No, it tastes quite muddy and soily. And I think technology's got better. Like, if you bought Pangasius from M&S rather than Lidl, let's say, as a consumer, I would imagine the M&S one would be sourced better and so on.
I would think so.
And maybe it doesn't taste like the river. But
I had it in a meal not that long ago. The wife cooked it, and it's just I'm not keen personally.
No, and I remember
I'll say the same as what most of my customers say. I'll have cod out, please.
I went to an Italian restaurant in Birmingham once, a nice restaurant, and they did this whatever it was, and I didn't quite click on at the time that it was Pangasius. It had one of its different names. It might have been Bassa or something. And it was a good 10 years ago, and I just tried it, and I thought, ugh. Like it had all like it had capers on it, so you think that would have masked it, and that's probably what they were thinking, but it didn't.
Just to mask it.
Yeah, it just had like an undertone of riverbed. Like, I don't know.
Best fish I've ever had was kingfish in Barbados.
Right. Oh, yeah, but I guess what helps there is the fact that you're in Barbados. If I gave you cod in Barbados, you'd probably be like, wow.
It was absolutely lily white. Yeah. I'll give you the story. We went, you go on these catamaran trips, don't you, when you're abroad? Well, we didn't. We hired a private rubber dinghy, for want of a better word. It was one of these ribs. Really nice guy. We got to know him in the hotel. And he said, I do these private trips. Come with me. Anyway, we went out, did a bit of snorkeling, as you do with the turtles, ruddy. And he said, right, I'm going to take you to a beach hut that all the locals use. So, because obviously they feed you, don't they? So he took us to this beach hut. Oh God, he gave us a kingfish in a bread cake, farm, bat, whatever you want to call it. I've never tasted anything like it when it comes to fish. It was so white, it was pure white, and the taste was spectacular. I wish we could get that here.
Yeah.
And fry that the way we do with cod and haddock. Oh God, what a fish that is. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
It is meant to have people. Look, they obviously like what fish is local to them. If you gave them a piece of cod, they'd probably be like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
The Australians, they really do like all fish. So the star of the show in an Australian chippy is the fish. Their chips.
I'll let you know at Christmas because I'm going.
Well, there you go. And over there, they just pretty much use any fries. Well, I'm sure they have their favourites. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to put them down on that. But the fries is not like us where we buy the potato, peel the potato, chip the potato. We take a lot of pride in that. Like I don't know, potatoes probably aren't overly native to Australia, are they? So
not particularly.
No. So they're using frozen fries, but the fish options they've got different types of fish from the shark family, barramundi. And we had barramundi in our shop for a few years, and I thought it was
nice.
It's nice, but it's coming from the other side of the world. It's coming from and like I was, again, I was thinking back then in 2008, put lots of fish on the menu, and to be fair, most of it all went into fish cakes. Customers just said, "Can I
too much?
Can I just have too much cod and haddock? That's it." Like we tried the lot. And I think, and that's why I know that sometimes it can be hard. But But talking of fish, though, obviously prices have gone up. I think I'd like to think, I don't want to jinx anything, but I think we've hit the peak. I think talking to fish guys, we've hit the peak. Hopefully, there's a lot of ifs here. But if there was a lot of weight hanging on the word if we get a resolution to the Russia-Ukraine thing, then
it would be nice.
It would be nice and also it'd be nice for the people that actually are facing death, which is bigger than our fish problems. But I think that if that comes to an end, a year later, fish prices change dramatically.
Yes, agreed.
And
for those that are listening, I don't know if you're aware, we had a 45, I think it was 40, either 40 or 45% market from Russia. Which is obviously not.
I think they're near.
Prices, we've lost that.
I think they're near 50%. I was told.
I know it's quite significant. So losing that portion of the market is obviously one of the reasons, not all the reason, but one of the reasons why prices have shot up.
It has been the perfect storm in some ways because you've got that 35% tariff. You've got the fact that then all of that fish is then being diverted to China. You've then got the cod issues in the Barents Sea that's been overfished. So really, everyone else is just like, let's put a price up wherever. You've got that 35% jump.
Yeah.
And look, I'm not saying that to be negative. Like, as in, if I owned a fishing vessel, like, I'm not going to lie. Like, I'd probably do the same. Like, you've got to take the money while it's there.
Yep.
It's a market.
Yes.
A lot of people, and a lot of people listening.
Supply and demand, isn't it?
Supply and demand. And what people don't quite understand, and I'm not defending this practice, but this is just life. Like if you're a farmer and you've got 1,000 tons of wheat, and instead of if you're usually getting £130 a ton, but someone else offers you 150 for exactly the same thing, you're not going to say no.
No, of course you're not.
Unless you've got a contract in place, that's different. But if
I'm not here to defend the boat owners, you know as well as I do. When we went on that trip last year to Norway, the boats they're like 5 stars, 5-star hotels, aren't they?
Yeah.
They get the best of the best.
Yeah.
And I was having a conversation with a particular boat owner at the Fish and Chip Awards, and I asked him about fish prices, and he said to me, "How else am I supposed to pay for my £60 million boat? 60 million.
Yeah.
That's a hell of an outlay, and it's got to be paid for.
And also, without even considering the cost of the boat, Norway, Iceland, Faroes, their wages are sky high. Like, I mean, they make our minimum wage look like poverty levels. All right, they do also pay more tax over there, but
yes, they do.
The wages, I think I was chatting to someone over there, and what did they say? I think they said minimum wage is somewhere like in the 30s. Like,
well, when I was talking to one of the skippers, as I usually do, and he was telling me that the crew, they have to compete with the oil industry.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah,
they have to compete with the oil industry. Hence the reason why these ships are now 5-star hotels.
Yeah.
They get the best of the best, but also with the wages. And some of the crew are on £250,000 a year.
Yeah.
Well, yes, please, I'll have a bit of that. But you don't know. With us just sat at a table eating fish and chips, you do not realise what they have to go through to earn that. Are you prepared to stay away from home for 3 months at a time in rough seas?
And I guess one way to think about it is if they're going to nearly die fishing, they might as well nearly die fishing in style.
Yes, exactly. I'm not here to
them,
but
I do think there is a middle line, and I think many people listening to this might say, well, you know what, I'd be happy paying 200 quid all year round, and maybe there's a lower number, maybe there's a higher number, but and maybe the vessel owners are like, you know what, we'd be happy with this all year round. But that doesn't change the fact that if they can get more, they will get more.
I went over to Iceland last year, and I had meetings with particular fish processors, and I said the same thing in every single meeting. My business doesn't like peaks and troughs. I don't like peaks and troughs. Whereas them, on the other hand, they thrive on it.
Yeah.
And he said to me, I said, I just want a flat line when it comes to paying the price for fish. Can we not come to some sort of arrangement where we know what we're paying for the entire year? And he said, no, we don't work like that. We like peaks and troughs. It's where we make our money. It's not good for my business, because every time I have to put up my prices, it then means I've got to change my menus out in the restaurant. And at £300 a pop every time you do it, and bearing in mind it was changing weekly, it gets a little bit expensive.
A good friend and customer of mine, Charlie Collins, who listens to this, he's coming on soon as well. He always says, it's the fishman's job to sell it for as much as he can, and it's my job to get it for as cheap as I can. He goes, our goals are diametrically opposed, you know, and it is so true. Like, we don't realize that. And so, you know, and it's the same with potatoes, it's the same with everything. The farmer, his goal is to get as much as he can, because at 1,000 tons, £20 a ton more, happy days, you know. So, and it is also, you know, it is a stock market. Stock, meaning in this instance, fish or potatoes, is the stock at question.
Yeah, well, I can fix. I plan 18 months ahead when it comes to my potatoes. Yeah. I get it from a particular farmer. Used to play football against him. That's how I got to know him. We shake on it every single year at set price. And my price hasn't changed for the last 18 months. I'm not going to tell you what it is, because it's a lot less than everybody else. But I plan 18 months ahead to make sure that I know what I'm getting. That's how I wanted my fish. Yeah. If I can plan ahead, I can then set my prices for the entire year. I absolutely detest putting prices up in my shop. I hate it. I'm not a greedy person. Never have been, never will be. And I hate overcharging. However, the but to all of this is that obviously fish prices have been changing that frequently. It's been very difficult to keep track of them all and to keep on top of it.
So how do you balance price increases or pricing within the business?
And I stopped putting...
Go on, sorry.
I stopped putting the price on the fish. And I'm not exaggerating when I say it was going up £10 per week. And for the shops that are actually doing a significant number of cases of fish, I'll use myself on an average, 50 cases a week on average. That's a significant amount of money you've got to get back. So rather than putting it onto the fish, and don't forget, every time you sell it, you've got VAT to pay on this as well. So it's okay saying £10 per box. You've got the VAT that goes on it when you sell it. Every time you put your prices up. So I stopped putting it on the fish. I left the fish alone. I put it on the chips. So every time the fish price changed, I put 10 pence on the price of chips. And that's how I gained my money back.
Yeah, and that obviously helps. If you're buying your potatoes at such a better price, then you can.
Yep. Yeah, I was allowed to. It allowed me to do it, because what is the one product that we sell the most of?
Yeah,
and it's chips. So it enables me to recoup a little bit of the losses.
That makes sense. So when you plan your menu, then you feel like you've hit your ceiling on fish. You didn't at the time hit the ceiling on chips because you had a lot of headroom.
Yes, I left them alone.
So you left that alone. So do you feel like you're still value for money? Do you feel like
very much
you
so?
Do? Yeah.
I went out for a meal twice last week through two pizza places, and I'm looking at the menu for pizzas. £18 for a pizza. £18 for a pizza. It's only a bit of dough. Hello? 18. Well, it was $18.95. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? So you can't compare fish and chips to a pizza and then charge those charge the extortionate price of a pizza compared to fish and chips. It's only because we are perceiving fish and chips as being a cheap meal. Well, I'm sorry, but no. Not anymore.
What's maddening about pizza is that, and obviously there's different qualities of pizza, so let's make that clear. And I don't want to throw every pizza under the bus here, but what's amazing is how people clearly accept that you can go get a pizza from Aldi for £2, Tesco £2, and there's better pizzas within that range, but you can go from £2 to, let's say, a tenner at the supermarket, to then a tenner to, let's say, 20 quid Domino's, and then a posher restaurant could be anywhere from 15 quid all the way up to whatever 30 quid. And you're right, to some degree, it is just dough and bits and bobs, and I guess anyone that makes pizzas will be screaming at the plug. They're like, you what? Like, but I get what but I guess we're being in the fish and chip industry, we're always going to compare outwardly, always, and
it's fish and chips is by far the better product. There's no question about that.
Yeah,
and even the British public vote that one.
Well, they vote that with their feet,
and it's certainly more nutritious. That's for sure.
Well, they vote with their feet, don't they?
Yeah, of course they do.
See, one of the crazy things I've this year, I have to be fair, talking to people like you over the years, and Gary Warner. My dad had a serious stroke a couple of years ago. I've really tried to get trim, and be healthier. But it's one thing I don't really eat a lot of is pizza, if I'm honest, because not because I don't like it, it's probably because I could eat a whole pizza without even batting an eyelid, and then I'll be like everyone else who eats loads of slices of pizza. Within 10 minutes it swells in your stomach and you're crouching over. So I'm fully aware that I'm a glutton, so I don't really have it that often. But I remember
I changed my diet.
And
I don't have it very often.
I remember seeing it being made at I think it was a Domino's, it might have even been a Pizza Hut. And before they put the tomato base on, they spread some palm oil on it, and then they put the tomato base. And I just thought, this ain't what a pizza's meant to be. They've adulterated it. And I remember reading this really good article about Domino's Pizza, and it said that Domino's Pizza, they've paid millions to figure out the science of making it just tasty enough, but not too tasty. Because if it's too tasty, your brain, as it eats it, says, oh, no, you've had enough now. Think of anything overly powerful, delicious.
Wow.
You eat a little bit and you think, well, think of, I don't know how much you like cheese, but blue cheese or Parmesan cheese. Yeah. Like if you eat that, a real strong cheese, or like a mature cheddar number 5, you eat a bit and you're like, you know what, I'm done. Like I've had plenty.
Yeah.
But if you then go to like a mild cheese, very mild, like a cheddar, which is not been matured out,
you don't feel like you've had any.
You don't feel like you've had any, so you keep eating it.
Don't.
And they figured this out. And they figured out that they need the perfect strike between flavour and blandness, and they also need the perfect balance between texture and no texture on the dough. Because if there's too much bite, then your brain registers that you've eaten something. And so, and what it does, it's got that for them, the perfect amount of give to then you eat it. You can almost swallow it. And then you ingest it. And then that's why 10, 15 minutes later, your stomach swells up, because your brain's like, it puts the shut off far too late. Or like that old saying, the horse has already bolted. You've already filled your stomach up with bread, and and then what happens is you're full. So
I wish I had £1 million to do a survey myself.
Yeah, no, it's mad. But this is what those companies can afford to do. Same with Pringles, same with Doritos, and this is why.
No thanks.
Yeah, and this is why all of these UPFs aren't the same, because I know there's a lot of talk about ultra processed food at the moment, but they're not all the same, and fish and chips probably falls slightly into the camp of UPF, but actually it's not the same, because the level of processing is a lot lower than something like a Domino's pizza.
It's all about moderation, isn't it, at the end of the day, when it comes to your diet?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been heavily obsessed. I've probably been, anyone that knows me at the moment will know that I'm probably not being moderate at all, because I'm correcting a massive, I'm doing an overcorrection, So
well, if it's any consolation, I was the same. Yeah. When winning the award, obviously in 2023, I was all over the place, trying different shops and eating the wrong foods, lack of exercise, and I'm looking down and I'm thinking, oh, what's going on here? So and it actually made me ill, because my diet was all wrong and lack of exercise. So I've changed mine. I'm on the Mediterranean diet, and it's working wonders for me.
Yeah, but and look, the Mediterranean diet, what people don't realise is that the food aspect is really important. Like, that is so important. Olive oil, great vegetables, great protein, beans, it's brilliant. but also keeping active. And that's something you do.
That's key.
Yeah, that is key.
That is absolutely key.
Yeah, because
I swim every day now, so that's obviously helping as well.
Yeah, I want to get into swimming, but one of the things that I saw, there was a really good book called The Pioppi Diet, and it's about a little place in Italy called Pioppi, and they couldn't understand why old ladies were living till like 90, 100, and still so a guy went there and did the test and looked at everything, and he was just sitting outside having a coffee one day, and he noticed one thing, that all the old ladies, mostly old ladies, walked up and down this hill every day to go to the shop. The shop was at the bottom, the house at the top. They didn't get an Uber. They didn't. They didn't get enough shopping to last a week. They went every day. So one thing they had was fresh food in their diet. Local, because they're in Pioppi, in God knows where in Italy, really small place, and they're eating food that's indigenous to them. And every day, walking up and down that hill 2-3 times a day, on a Sunday, going to church. And there's a lot to be said about keeping active, and I've learnt that the hard way.
I've just started drinking a certain brand of olive oil.
Okay.
Although it doesn't taste particularly nice in one go, it's made a massive difference to my joints.
Yeah, I bet.
I've abused my body through sport, and my knees and ankles have not been the best. Yeah. And I've noticed since I've started having this olive oil, it's just before your breakfast, just a mouthful of olive oil. What a difference it's made.
That will also, I don't want to be too crude, but that will be helping something else. People listening will understand just by saying that. I don't want to put anybody off what they're eating right now. But olive oil is probably one of the best oils ever.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
And and I think it is just it's a great product. Going back to we've gone off. We've nearly become a health podcast. We've nearly become a health podcast. No, people are going to think 1 minute, has it changed without us knowing? So again, one thing I was worried about is you're very proactive, you're very promotional, you're very happy and positive, which we've discussed. But you have also took a turn to talking about these issues, these negative issues, either on social media or on ITV News or whatever, local news. Yep. Is that a worry? Customers hearing more about this, has that put anybody off?
No, not particularly, no. You can fool the public some of the time, but you can't fool the public all of the time. I'm sure you've heard it.
Yeah.
It's the look for product. And a quality product. So with that in mind, they know what they want. That's just, you can't fool them. They know what they want, they know when they want it, and they know how much they want to pay for it.
Yeah.
And if you start overcharging, then see ya. You're going out of business.
Yeah.
There's a fine balance. Have we reached that balance? Good question. Don't know.
You don't know yet. And you'll soon find out, because
yeah.
Now, one of the upsides, and I know this, I'm going to qualify this, but I know it's difficult. But one of the upsides with these price increases that everyone's having to do or done is that if fish is £300 a case and they've gone to that price, when hopefully, all being well, it drops. And let's say if I'm being wholly optimistic, mega optimistic, let's say it creeps back down to 200. As we know, like anything, the price goes up like a rocket and down like a feather. We know that.
A bit like fuel.
A bit like fuel, yeah. And I think that's where I got that analogy from. But if that's the case, then everyone is slightly now in a better position because they've upped their prices, but they'll have more margin to play with at the end of it. Now, I know listening to it right now, a lot of people are going to be saying, well, that doesn't help me today. I get that. But that is also an upside, isn't it?
So I'll come back to what I've said previously. When I first started this business, I never ever thought short term, ever. Because I knew this was going to be my career and I knew I wanted to give it a damn good shot. And I never thought short term. Everything I do is long term, and that includes the price increases. You start thinking short term, you're not going to last very long. So when you're looking at your increases, don't just do it in increments, small increments. So eventually your customers get used to it. They know what's going on. As long as you're obviously informing them. So the usual scenario, social media, etc.
So you're a fan of, like, you've heard the pod squads. You know where I stand. I'm a fan of not really screaming from the rooftops that you've had an increase. Especially if it's little increases. If you're,
slow but sure.
Yeah, if you're going 5p here, 10p there, 20p here, you know, over the course of a year, and you're adjusting carefully, then I personally wouldn't be screaming from the rooftops and saying,
nope,
you know, we've put our price up. Because I feel like that probably puts more people off than it pleases. I do think at the same time, staff should be well informed. So if a customer does challenge them and say, hey, last week when I came in, it was £9 and now it's £9.40, for argument's sake, the staff should be able to answer that. Well,
we usually have meetings most days, so they're all well informed.
Yeah.
Listen, you've got to start with your staff first and foremost. They need to know what's going on because they're in the firing line.
Yeah.
So if you don't inform your staff, then how can your staff inform the customers? So we usually do it on a daily basis. Sometimes it's not necessarily, and we do it weekly. Sometimes we do it monthly, but predominantly we do it on a daily basis. You don't turn up to work and say, I've got no fish today, but you don't tell your staff. And then when somebody comes to buy fish and chips, you've got no fish, you have to keep them in the loop. But I've always thought that if you do it slow but sure, you're introducing a pay increase, a price increase, they generally leave you alone. And then you start informing, drip feeding them information, and then they know what's going on. That's always been my policy. Let's not do it in big increases at all. And I know I keep saying the same thing. I use the same person, David Miller. He did a brilliant article a couple of years ago, and in this article he stated that the fish and chip industry were petrified at the end of the year to put the prices up 10, 20 pence. They were petrified. And then all of a sudden, obviously, the end of COVID come, and those increases weren't 10 and 20 pence, they were £1. And I remember reading it and I thought, do you know what? That is absolutely brilliant. And he was right. We were petrified of putting 10, 20 pence at the end of the year. And over the last year, I was doing it weekly with very little comeback from customers because they knew what was going on, because they were well informed.
Yeah.
So give yourself a pat on the back, Dave, because those articles have stuck in my head.
Don't tell him that, because we won't be able to wheel him out. You know, he's going to be a bit big-headed on the next pod squad. And but I guess look, there's lots of different strategies. One thing I was thinking about as I was preparing for this again, like, obviously you've won one major award, one less major award, but still to you personally major. You've had a decent refit. I know that's something you constantly do. You've won awards, you've been on TV, news, media, and you've had some price increases. And maybe over that period, they've probably been maybe not significant monthly or weekly, but over the 3 years, I'd say it's significant, like most places. What have customers' expectations been like? Are they finickier? Are they more
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. They're if something is not quite right, we know about it. Because at the end of the day, when you put on a pedestal, you've got to maintain your standards, and just that slight drop. And at the end of the day, we're human. We're going to make errors. I don't care who you are. Unless you are a robot, you're going to make an error. They jump all over us if something is not right. But it always comes back to me, because I know a lot of my customers. This might sound a bit daft, and yes, we're really busy, but although I'm not on the shop floor per se, I'm still out. I still go and meet and greet, and I still see a lot of the customers, and I get it in the ear from them. So I make sure that whatever comes back to me is then relayed to the staff to make sure that there's no errors. It's just how I operate, and that's probably what separated me from everybody else.
Yeah,
I want to get amongst the customers, and I want to know them.
Absolutely. Because
at the end of the day, fish and chips is personal.
Well, yeah,
it's a personal thing, and that's what separates us from everybody else. That's what gives us. Me personally, I think we have the best product out there, bar none. And if you can top that off by making sure you are liaising with your customers and you're meeting and greeting them, and do what you're supposed to do, really, because after all, we're in hospitality, aren't we?
Yeah. I think one of the good things about fish and chips, I was saying this to someone the other day, is like, ain't it one of those foods that you have to treat yourself, or you have because it's a staple product, or you have it at the beach, or you have it at home. I can't think of any other cuisines. Like, if I'm at the beach, I don't say, "Oh, do you fancy a curry?" And there's not many other cuisines in the UK that could boast that. Like, I wouldn't ever order a pizza if I was at the beach. Like,
no, you wouldn't. This might sound a bit daft, but I regularly get fish and chips to take away, and I go down onto the seafront and I just sit and eat them because you've got the smell of the fresh air, the salty sea air with salt and vinegar on your fish and chips, and it's just completely different. But you have got that absolutely spot on. I would never think about going and eating a pizza down at the sea.
No.
Ever. No. It's always fish and chips.
Always. Yeah, it's I don't know why. I think you could have fish and chips the night before and go to the seaside tomorrow and be like, "Oh, should I have fish and chips?" Yeah, it's like, but it's different because, like you said, yesterday I was having them for my lunch or work, or the night before I was having my own watching the Coronation Street. I don't watch that. I'm just thinking of average customers. And then the next day it's, well, we're at the beach. What do you do at the beach?
Yeah, fish and chips.
Like,
all day long.
And it's although it's the same meal everywhere you get it. It's not. It's so crazy. No. Like we supply quite a lot of pubs, and we got a really nice restaurant near us, and we go there every now and then. It's not expensive. It's a nice restaurant, and they use our batter and they make fish and chips. And my kids get it, and I'm like, I shake my head. I'm like, fish and chips.
Yeah.
But they're but it spans like everywhere. Like, even in Whitby, the restaurants are doing fish and chips. The bed and breakfast are doing fish and chips. Well, not for breakfast, but for lunch or whatever. So I do think like everybody's jumping on the bandwagon, like, because they want our product. But but it's not the same everywhere you go.
I've been seeing recently on social media this American guy. He's come over. He's living in the UK. Okay. He's been here for about 6-7 months, and he's gone from burgers to fish and chips is now his favourite.
Oh, really? I think I know which one. Is it the guy with long hair? That one?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, he loves them. Yeah. He certainly he blows the trumpet of trenches and magpie an awful lot.
In Whitby, generally, like, there isn't a bad chip shop. Not really. Like, don't get me wrong, those that you just mentioned do a fantastic job, as do the others. But you could pretty much fall over in any chip shop in Whitby and you'd have a great fish and chips.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, agreed.
And I think there's a few places like that in the UK where you just go and all the fish and chip shops are great. But that's not to say that everyone else is bad, because you have also got the seaside that really pulls you in there. The only difference is with Whitby is that the air doesn't smell of seawater; it smells of dripping. So where I park at the top and I walk down through the keyhole, the minute you get to the outside the little keyhole walkway, which, for those that don't know, it's a walkway under a mountain essentially, and you get to the top of the stairs and you take a big deep breath in, and all you smell is dripping. So one day I thought, I'm going to see how far I have to walk out on the pier essentially before it stops smelling of dripping. I was nearly hanging off the edge. And I just about smell salt water.
I lived there for a year. And it was, you've got multiple choices of fish and chip shops, because they're all equally as good.
Absolutely. And look, and it is diverse. Like, if you're on a customer facing fish and chip group, everyone's got their favourite. And there's enough great ones to please everybody.
Mine at the time was Royal Fisheries. Loved it. Which is obviously owned by the
Fusco's. I've not eaten there for years.
Loved it. It was just brilliant.
Yeah, and
that's where I used to go.
There's so many underrated ones. Like there's Mr. Chips is really underrated. Magpie is celebrated. Trenches is celebrated. The Fusco's are celebrated, obviously, but Mr. Chips it's one of those that you sort of have to know about. And but then also, like, there's one down a back street, Silver Street Chip Shop, which is really good. There's so many. Like, again, I don't think you're going to have bad fish and chips in Whitby.
No,
and you're not going to have bad ice cream in Whitby either. So
no.
But I do think that they all do a good job, and they're all lovely people. Actually, I know quite a lot of them in Whitby, and they're
they're all family run.
Absolutely.
The majority of them are.
The majority of them are. And there's no real big chains. I think you've got You had Papa's, but that's gone now. That's that's a burger thingy now. Wendy's.
Wendy's,
and then you've got Fisherman's Wife, which technically, although owned by an individual, is a group. Because that's Graham Reed Stevenson.
Yes.
So
yes, it is.
Yeah.
No, Graham.
Yeah.
Nice guy.
Nice guy. Yeah. Nice guy. So yeah, I think that is probably the only one I can think of that is part of a group.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think anybody really knows. I don't know. I've never really done a survey.
But I see the attraction of Whitby. It's a spectacular place. I love it.
Yeah.
And I actually went on my honeymoon there. My first honeymoon.
Was it in the winter?
Yeah. Was it
in the winter?
Autumn. It was October.
That place,
absolutely beautiful.
At night in the winter, you can see why the book Dracula was written there. You can see it exactly.
Yeah, you can.
And the cold goes through you. Like, I mean, yeah,
it's biting.
Oh, it goes straight through you. Yeah.
But great place, love Whitby.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a nice place. And anybody listening to this, like if you ever wanted to do like a pilgrimage and just go eat fish and chips for like 3 or 4 days, like you wouldn't run out of places. Like,
no, definitely not.
And that's probably why that guy did Whitby, because it wouldn't surprise me. He's probably thinking, when I'm doing a filming session, I can actually just do 4.
To go
I can just do 3 or 4 in one day here.
Yeah.
So I was hoping to see you at the KFE ball, and I was looking for you, and I said to Ryan, "Where's Geoff?" And he goes, "Geoff's in bed. What happened?"
So I set off early. Set off about 8 o'clock in the morning. And I thought, I'll get there bright and early because I want to do mini golf. And arrived about 11 o'clock. And it was too early to check in. I'm missing a little bit here because what most of you guys won't know is that I am a bit of a lightweight when it comes to drink. And after 1 and a bit pints, my head starts going a little bit fuzzy. So, with that in mind, I turned up and I thought, right, I'll have a coffee. So I grabbed a coffee, went and sat at the first tee with a particular person. Sat there and I thought, right, finish that. I'll have a lime and soda because it's still a bit early yet. 12 o'clock came. I thought, right, I'm having a pint. So I had one. Bearing in mind, we're in a sun trap. And there's glass at the first tee, so you can have a good laugh, and they can't hear you tee off, or we can't hear them tee off, and they can't hear us. So 1 pint turned to 2, to 3, to 4, and bearing in mind I'm a lightweight, to 5, to 6. And I looked at my watch and I thought, oh God, it's 5 o'clock. I haven't checked in yet.
Oh dear.
So I went and checked in. Got into the room and I thought, well, it doesn't start till 7. I'll just have 40 winks. And if I have it at home, I usually only have about 20 minutes, half an hour. Yeah, well, that 20 minutes, half an hour turned into 9:45 at night. So I missed the entire thing. And by the time, when I looked at it, I thought, by the time I've had a shower, got changed, it's pretty much all over. So I missed the entire thing. But what a brilliant afternoon I had. Brilliant.
You were clearly not just affected by the drink. You must have been tired.
I was very. I must have needed it because otherwise I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I was really looking forward to that. But I spoke to Gary from Lighthouse Fisheries and he actually rang me up and he said, "Are you all right, pal?" I'd just arrived at my front door as well because I'd set off about 7:30 that morning. Got obviously bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And he rang me up and he said, "You all right, pal?" I said, "Yeah, it's a funny story, actually."
Yeah, we were sat together, me, him and Ryan, and me, Gary and Ryan, and he was like, "Oh, he's in bed." I was like, "Really? Is he sick?" "No, he's just in bed. He's had too much to drink." I was like, "Yeah, well, fair enough." But your body was screaming out for rest, clearly.
Yeah, well, I've reduced my workload after obviously winning the takeaway of the year. It took its toll on me. I've stopped working 7 days.
You're not at the coalface as much now.
No, I can't. I'm 56 years of age. I can't do it anymore. Sports played a massive part in this as well. So I've started to use more of my mind and less of my body, and I'm listening to what it's saying to me. So I'm not working 7 days a week after doing it for 26 and a bit years. And I've reduced it down to 5. So that's helped quite significantly. But I'm still playing catch up when it comes to recovering after 26 and a half years working 7 days a week and only having 2-3 weeks holiday a year.
Well, you can only abuse your body so much, mate.
Yeah, well, it was telling me. So I start. You reach an age in life, and if you either listen or you don't. And I want to see. I want to live at least another 20, 30 odd years at least and enjoy what I've got. Because it's all right working your Rastafarians off, but it's you need to enjoy it as well. And although I love my job, and I've got the best job in the world, I thought to myself, I'm not going to be around to enjoy reap any of the benefits of what the foundations I've laid. So I'll step back a little bit.
Makes sense. One thing before we move on to a wider issue for a second is you've got the gluten-free setup at the back now. How's that going for you? Like, was it worthwhile?
Oh God, yeah, all day long. It was. Well, we're the only ones in the town that do it anyway. He says there's a shop's just started doing it once a week. It's expensive to do if you're only doing it in dribs and drabs, which we are no longer doing in dribs and drabs. We're doing it all day long, every day, 7 days a week. So the investment that I made has definitely paid off because we were frying originally. I started off in a 2-pan Linkat fryer, and it was okay. It was okay, but eventually I had to get 3 pans, a single and 2 doubles. I then went from 3 Linkat fryers to a 1-pan Karemco electric, which still wasn't enough. And now I've got a 2-pan range in the back specifically, which we basket fry on this. It is just specifically for gluten-frees, and we sell a lot of gluten-free. I don't charge any extra, albeit it's a lot more expensive. The ingredients is more expensive. I don't charge any more because I don't want to, because one person will bring in a family of 4 just because they're celiacs.
Okay.
So it wouldn't make economical sense from a personal perspective to then be charging more because they'll think twice, whereas they're paying the same price as everybody else.
I think that's where the majority of the winning is from that, is because
all day
the family comes in, whoever's the celiac, they can still enjoy their product, and everyone else just eats around the table like normal.
Yeah, the one thing that we've learnt from all of this is that you have to label it as well.
Yes.
We had a particular incident when we first started that we had an order of gluten-free. There was a family of 4. One was celiac, and we had and the other 3 were okay. They didn't have any problems. And this celiac ended up having normal fish and chips. Well, I could have, if a hole had have opened up and swallowed me, honestly, I was petrified, because in some particular cases it is dangerous. Majority not. It just gives them a bit of an upset stomach, but it can be serious in particular cases. Anyway, I went to see this family, and I couldn't apologise enough. So from that moment on, if you have a gluten-free, you end up with a flag in your fish saying gluten-free. So whoever's taking it out cannot get mixed up.
Yeah.
And that works for us. But it's a brilliant seller. It doesn't work for everybody, but I've made it work for us. It's the same winter-summer scenario. I've taken winter from just being okay to being busy. And it's the same with the celiac. We've done very well out of it, and I want to continue doing so. And your gluten-free batter mix, by the way, is brilliant.
No, you didn't have to have a plug. I wasn't talking about
really good.
Well, I'm glad you like it. And about a month ago, we obviously ran out of stock, and we kept going. And we ran out of stock of the curry, but we're all sorted now. So everyone listening will know that.
Good.
Even Geoff got caught out in that one. So
Jeff
didn't get any special favours. Sorry. But it is one of those things that when you run short because everybody wants it, you just have to keep rushing to get it.
Yeah, great product it is. Really, really good.
Thank you for that. Obviously, we talk about it, but I think it's just one of those things that I think if you're going to do it, you've got to be mindful of the costs. So, if I'm going to throw something back into it, we supply a lot of people with this product, and we always say to people, look, you can do it daily where possible, but then you've got to have good oil rotation, good oil management. Or just do it out the back in the tabletop fryer and see how you get on. I have a friend of mine who tried it for, I know this, he did it for a year worth of Sundays, and he just never took off for him. And, he tried it and he's took it off. And, and I think some people it works. Everyone's got a different strategy, different customer base. And if it works, and really lean into it. And,
Well, it worked for us because we were the only ones doing it.
Yeah.
That's obviously a great plus. it's not always going to work for everybody. I mean, regional variations come into it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was unheard of at the time. I can remember talking to one particular customer saying, I haven't had fish and chips for over 15 years. You've put it on your menu and now I'm here every week, which is great.
Yeah.
But what works for one doesn't necessarily work for another.
No, absolutely.
But it's been a brilliant move for us.
And this is why, again...
You see, we've got it from both sides. Not only do we sell it in the takeaway, we sell it in the restaurant. So it's a win-win for us.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. No. And for us, across the board, we've just tried to have like an allergen reduction over the business. Like, so for example, we don't do 2 curries, we just do 1, and we've reduced the allergens. We don't do 2 gravies, we just do 1 that's allergen free. And I think that way you've not got to worry about, have I used the right one? Have I used the wrong one? Having them both next to each other in the storage, you know. So yeah, I think you've got to be careful of these things.
Yeah, definitely.
Since
we brought... I did a trip up to the Real Food Cafe.
Oh yeah,
Whenever
Sarah.
I go out to different shops, which I do quite regular, I try and learn while I'm at it. And I went up there, and they had a label printer which was date code genie. That's it.
Okay.
And I thought, wow, that's brilliant. I could actually. What it does is you go onto your computer, you put in all your ingredients, and it prints it all out for you, and you stick it on your box. So there is no excuses of not differentiating between your regular fish and chips and your gluten-free, because not only does it have a gluten-free sticker on it, it has the ingredients with it as well.
Yeah.
So that they know and you're covered. Natasha's Law obviously kicked in, and that was right at the forefront of my mind. So how do I get away from it? When I saw that at the Real Food Cafe, I thought, I'm bringing it in. They're not cheap. I think it was about £1,200-1,300 for this labeler, but it's about improving your business and making sure you're doing things to the best of your ability, and you're not cross-contaminated.
Yeah. Well, and I might get Sarah to write about that. Sarah's one of our contributors on our website now. So, you know, she's written 3 or 4 fantastic articles and always very well thought through. So, yeah, well, I might get her to write about that because I think it's an important topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She uses Date Code Genie for all sorts.
Interesting. So, since our last episode, we have had a new government in place. And in the last episode, you took issue with value-added tax, the dreaded value-added tax.
Yep.
I am going to be a little bit pedantic, though, just a little bit, because I'll get told off if I don't. You said earlier when you were talking about fish that I also pay X amount of VAT on top of that. I'd just like to be really annoying, and everyone's going to swear listening to this, but it makes people like you more than me in this instance, is that you're collecting VAT to pass on to HMRC.
Yes, I am an unpaid tax collector.
You are indeed, absolutely. Not that should make anybody feel any better, but that is the way it is. So are you concerned about the way the first however months it is, 15 months, 14 months have gone? Are you annoyed? Are you stressed? Do you think it's going to get any better? What's your thoughts?
So, I cannot remember a Labour government that, when they left office, left it in a better place. I don't like talking about politics because my opinion people won't like. I don't think there's a good one amongst any of the parties at all. They're only in it for themselves. They couldn't care less about the working man, stroke British public. They couldn't care less. And you only have to look at the newspapers and see the news, how much money they're sending abroad. Firstly, I mean, the list goes on of what could be stopped, where we then no longer have to pay certain taxes because it's kept within the country. But going on to VAT, there's no escape. What I don't like about VAT is the fact that you've got the likes of your Greggs, your Couplands, all your pastry shops who sell so-called ambient food, which is obviously not classed as hot food. And as soon as it's ambient, there's no VAT on it. But how many times have you been into a Greggs and had a hot pasty? Because I have. But yet they're not getting charged VAT on it. And I'm sorry, that's not acceptable. If you are selling hot food, whether you say it's ambient or not, it's hot. so you should be getting charged VAT. So there's a collection point for the government straight away, which needs to be looked at.
So you think think they should widen it to all takeaway food?
Yes, I do. All day long. See, they're going on about taxes and trying to charge us for breathing air soon. That needs to be looked at. You can't. As you can tell in my voice, I get frustrated. And I get frustrated because we're earning the money in the first place to pay it. But if I wasn't, like the smaller fish and chip shops out there who are right on the periphery of this, who are struggling because of VAT, why are they having to pay VAT when they're only earning a small amount? That threshold needs to be looked at. They're never going to change the rule for VAT ever. It earns them too much money.
So you think rather than trying to change the rules, we should just ask for it to be applied to more products?
Yes.
So again, if we then add it, where would it stop? Like, just as I'm thinking out, you tell me where you'd stop it. So we'd get up to your bakery goods, fresh bakery goods, regardless of how hot or cold or what they are. Then where else would it go to?
You see, if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, why are you putting VAT on food? And I know they class this as a luxury item, which they do, but you've still got to eat. You've still got to eat. We can't live without food. Why are we being taxed on food? It should never happen. I don't care whether it's luxury or not.
I wonder, though, is there a distinction between any food from the supermarket, which pretty much, if it's unprocessed, untouched, is pretty much VAT-free, and food that you chose to buy from a takeaway or a restaurant? I don't know. Like, would you say that that's fair? Or would you say that so would you say, right, if we just break it down for a moment, would restaurant food be VATable?
Well, they're getting taxed in other ways, are they not? When you put your accounts in at the end of the year, you pay corporation business tax. You pay it.
So if there wasn't VAT, you'd probably then pay more corporation or personal tax, wouldn't you?
The way I think is this: if you were going to tax a business to death, you are slowing the economy down.
I'd agree with that on the whole, yeah.
That's a fact. Yeah. You're slowing the economy down, which means if I'm not getting taxed, I will go out and I will just keep spending. I'll spend because I want to keep upgrading my business until I've got nothing left to upgrade. And I'll keep doing it, which means I'm continually spending. I can only do that when after I've finished paying my VAT with what's left. Would I mean, I'm sure you're the same. The bottom line is, if we aren't taxed as much as we were, the economy would be far better off. And when I say taxed, I mean VAT.
I'd agree with that. And I want to be devil's advocate here, and I know people will hate me for this because I know VAT is really subjective within the industry.
You can tell by the tone of my voice.
I can tell, yeah. But I'm also trying to get my comments right. But do you think do you think that we think, when I say we, this industry or any VAT or industry that collects VAT, should we say, they think of it as a business tax, when really it's a consumer tax, and the government see it as a consumer tax, not a business tax, and they do actually see you as unpaid tax collectors.
Yep.
But the industry sees it as a tax on the business because of obviously the way it's handled. Yes. You receive it; it's money that was in your till physically, or nowadays digitally.
This comes down to the same thing. Fish and chips is perceived as a cheap meal. And if we don't keep it, I'm not going to say keep it as a cheap meal, because it's not a cheap meal any longer, but because it's perceived as a cheap meal, you are petrified to try and recoup that VAT, because you've got to increase your prices, and we're petrified of doing it. We are unpaid tax collectors. That is a fact.
Yeah, you are.
This debate will rage on for a long time. They won't change it. That's a fact. You can talk about it till you're blue in the face, but does it make it right? No, it doesn't. It's food. We shouldn't be taxing food. End of story.
Yeah.
And that's all I have to say on that particular subject.
I just wonder if there just isn't the appetite from any government. And I see a lot of people on Twitter saying, this government don't care. And the truth was the same, because those people were saying it about the last government. And they'd say,
yes.
and they were Tories. Well, they were soft Tories, and these are, I don't think they're that left leaning, really. They're all sort of skirting around the centre, aren't they? But I don't think the appetite's there. The appetite just isn't there. But then one argument would be, let's say it got dropped to 10%, for argument's sake. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you drop that so it reflects the customer? Or go on, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so.
Well, when COVID was on, it was reduced to 5%.
Yeah.
The government owed me money. It's never happened ever. I put my VAT through, and when I looked at the figures that were coming back at me, they actually owed me money. And I was mortified, because it went down to 5%, didn't it? To say it was a license to print money was an understatement, because you're not paying it out. And all of a sudden, your bank account's like, wow, it's not gone out. God, yes, please. I'll have a bit more of this. Obviously, they then reintroduced it, and those days went. They come and went as quick as COVID did. I'll refer back to what I said. When that money was coming in, I spent it all. And I spent it all upgrading. This is what I do. I continually upgrade my business. But I didn't just sit on it in the bank. I reinvested it back into my business. So I'm going to say it again. You take away or reduce the VAT, your economy is going to thrive, because we've got more money to spend. I would call for any MP to review the VAT strategy that they are.
Whose job is
in
it?
Place at the moment?
Whose job is it? Do you think it's to go to the MPs and say, "Come on, guys, shake your heads."
I was going to discuss it with my local MP, but he ended up cancelling me, and I've not actually met with him yet. And that was right at the very top of my priority list was VAT, to see what could be done. I know I've been picking on Greggs, etc., but if you're going to tax food, then tax food.
As awful as it is, I think, for you guys, or if you see it from that point of view, because everyone's got different opinions. Greggs do actually follow the letter of the law. There was ambiguous, there was grey area before that was passed. That's why George Osborne dealt with it, and then they made it clearer. Supermarkets now no longer sell hot food with 0 rated VAT, which was also a problem back then, which we don't ever hear about now. And Greggs, I don't know if you've been in one lately, because I don't really go that often. I'll go for a coffee or something, but they do actually sell quite a lot of VAT rated hot food now as well.
Yes, they do.
So I do think that, I don't know. I just wonder whose job is it to go to government collectively and say, look, this needs looking at. What is the best argument to have?
I've had this discussion with Andrew Crook, obviously from the NFFF, and every time I do a TV/radio interview, he asks me anyway, see if you can get VAT in there, and I do. And I ask the interview, I say the same thing time and time again. Please don't edit the VAT out. If we're going to talk about it, let's air it. And every single interview I've done, they edit the VAT out, and I don't know why.
I would imagine if you're talking about fish, it's just not relevant, I'd imagine.
But it is, because it's at the end of the day, it goes from 0 to then being vatable, because you're heating it up. It's a bone of contention throughout the frying industry. But do I think they're going to look at it? Absolutely not. They couldn't care less.
Yeah. So then, if they never care less, we've got 2 options. Do we carry on, which I guess the government would rather you did anyway, shut up about it and carry on? Or do you mobilise a different plan to get some change? I don't know. Have we just not had the right strategy?
It's same as anything in life. The workers of the world must unite.
Yeah.
If the workers of the world unite, then you can gain quite a significant momentum to change things. The problem is that we've become very selfish, and we're all self-indulged in our own world. One person can change everything, provided we unite together. And I know this is a lot of political jargon, and a conversation that you don't really want to get too in depth with, but we have to stick together. And if we don't do things as a group and collectively, we're never going to get anywhere. And it's always left, and I've noticed it's been left to one man and one man only. And he's the one that's been banging the drum about VAT, and that's Andrew Crook. He's always on about it. As he gets it into as many interviews as he possibly can. It does make a significant difference if we could get it reduced.
But that's fine. He talks about it. So we're going to be devil's advocate for a moment.
But what's happening? He's on his own.
Well, he's got a group behind him.
It's not enough. The entire industry should be out, and we should. How many times have you put the TV on and seen groups of X, Y, and Z protesting about certain things? Well, that should be us. We should be out there protesting. We're getting charged 20%. This isn't on, but we don't. We don't, and we need to be sticking together, and we don't do it in big enough numbers. We just don't do it, and we should.
But
you can tell that I
think my concern is, and I think you're right, Andrew does talk about it a lot, just like Greg spoke about it a lot before him. And no doubt whoever takes over Andrew one day will talk about it. But talking is talking. We need actions, and someone needs a plan, because government won't listen to talking. I saw my MP, and I mentioned it to him, and he was just like, "It is what it is." That's all they're going to say.
Yeah, well, that's not good enough.
No, and it's not good enough. But they've got other things that are more important. And if nobody can build a proper strategy and a thought process to articulate it, UK hospitality struggle with it. NCAS would struggle with it. I think this is where the collective of ideas need to come together, and then there needs to be one plan forward. And that's if everyone agrees. Now, when I see the economy the way it is, I do wonder sometimes, like, will the government just say, no, we can't afford it because the government, the economy's on its butt? Like, I don't know. A lot of people think I'm a naysayer about this, because I do often take the devil's advocate view on this, but I just haven't seen a consistent plan with action and momentum to get us to that point.
Well, I remember visiting my father in hospital, and he ended up on the liver ward where all the alcoholics were.
Poor guy.
He'd had a heart attack, and it was the only place left for him. So they sent him down to the liver ward, and it was like stepping back into the 1900s. I've never seen anything like it. And he said to me on the way out, how can one bomb cost £1 million, and then you go and turn up you get put into a hospital like this? The point I'm making is that the money isn't prioritised in the right areas. We spend money in areas that don't really need to be spending money with, i.e. sending it abroad for a start. We need to be looking after our own. I don't have a problem paying taxes per se, provided my taxes are spent in the right area. And although we vote these people in, they're not interested in our opinion. They just do what they want to do, whether we like it or we don't. And then you get the next party, and you vote them in thinking they're going to do the right thing, and they don't. And they're constantly, we're chasing our tails constantly, because you think you're voting the right party in to try and change things, and it just never happens. And it is exactly the same. They're not going to look at VAT because they're just not interested. They want to spend that VAT money in completely irrelevant areas. I know it's very contentious, is this. I understand it. I know it needs to be planned out. I get that. And it's going to have to be thought through very carefully. But unless we stick together as a hospitality industry, we're never going to get anywhere. It is a bone of contention with me. There's no question about it. I begrudge paying it, as I'm sure most of the listeners do. They don't want to pay it. I don't want to pay it. I don't see why we should. But we're just told to shut up and get on with it.
Well, I don't think it's even got that far. It's just that nobody's willing to listen. I just think until somebody can show whoever the right people are in the right places another alternative that either makes them more or is cost neutral, they're just going to say no. We can't afford to lose the money.
And right now would have been a perfect time to have it reduced with what's going off with fish prices.
I guess, but is that their problem?
Nope.
Like that
not my problem.
That's not their issue, is it? And I think
no.
And I think it's not Labour, it's not Conservative. Even Reform isn't promising lower VAT. It's just not on anybody's radar. I don't want to make it it's a Labour thing, it's a Conservative.
It's a political
thing. And with VAT at 20%, they don't have to. I did a podcast with a VAT specialist, and he said to me, Stelios, he goes, VAT in the UK has been butchered since day one.
Yes.
He goes,
well, you just sit back a second. Think about this. 20%. 20%. Of your food you're being taxed on.
Only hot food.
20%.
Yeah.
What on earth is that?
Yeah.
It's scandalous.
So what he was saying is the difference is that if you go to Spain, France, Cyprus, many normal things in the supermarket, let's just say raw chicken and pasta, that would also have VAT on it at 8% or 10%. And what he's saying is this is why our government, many successive governments in the UK have always pledged to prioritise cheaper food for the most part. So they don't want to put VAT on supermarket staples. Now, he's saying we use VAT in the UK like a hammer instead of a scalpel, whereas the Europeans use it like a scalpel. And he's saying they're more targeted, they're more effective. So, but can you imagine the government saying, we're dropping VAT on hot food to 10%, for argument's sake. However, we're also putting VAT on supermarket staples at 10%. I would imagine there would be absolute outrage. So I do think that we need.
Why are you putting VAT on food? Shouldn't be doing it full stop.
Well,
shouldn't be doing it. There should be no VAT on food.
So then if your argument goes back to no VAT on hot food or cold food, this government is going to say, well, where do we get this money from? And I know what you're saying. Stop sending it abroad. But I guess they're going to say, well, we have a duty. And I think there's no. It needs a really.
Their duty is to the British public.
I agree, but I think that they will find a reason. Always.
Yes, well, they always do. You ask them a question, they don't even answer it straight. Let's be fair.
No, they don't lie straight in bed, do they? But you look, I think this is something.
Here's another one for you. This is obviously for the hospitality. I asked this question on Saturday. I went to my nephew's wedding, and I'm sat at this table, and I said to this couple, he said to me, "Would you like a drink?" I said, "Just out of curiosity, are you paying cash or card?" And he said, "I'll be paying card." I said, "Well, let me educate you on this card. Every time you use that, it costs me. If you come into my shop, it costs me money." "Really?" I said, "Yes, it costs me money. Depending on obviously what rate I've been given, my average monthly credit card bills are racking up to £1,000 plus per month." "No." I said, "Yes." I said, "If you use cash, it costs me nothing."
Is that true, though? Does it cost you nothing?
Costs me nothing because I don't bank any. I use all my, other than the likes of yourself, which I have to bank transfer, I pay cash. I pay cash for my fish. I pay cash for my raw materials from Henry Colbeck's and Tea Quality and all the rest of them that I use, like drinks companies. So you use that cash is costing me nothing.
You use those physical notes to pay bills, which means that you don't have to do anything with it. But at some point, you must bank a surplus. You must bank something.
No, because credit card
that tops it up.
Debit cards are that vast now. Hence the £1,000 a month charges I'm receiving. It's ridiculous. So basically, what I said was, here's what I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you a question. If you had to pay 6 pence every time you used your card, would you use it? And he went, "No." So basically, you're asking me to pay your 6 pence then. Oh, I didn't look at it like that. I said, "Well, no, that's because you're not paying it."
Yeah, but I guess.
And then I mentioned VAT, and I said at the end of that transaction, what you buy, I've then got 20% VAT to pay on that as well. Oh, I didn't know that. So all these hidden taxes, well, I won't call it a tax.
Costs, hidden costs.
Costs. Yeah. They don't see it.
But is it their job to see it?
Why not?
I don't know. Like, if I'm a consumer, I'll go buy a pair of trainers from town. Like, I'm thinking old school now. I buy everything online. But let's say I went to the town centre to buy some trainers and a pair of socks.
You mean if you can find one?
All right. Yeah, I was just trying. Imagine any listener right now. Imagine it's year 2005. Okay, and I go to the town centre to buy some trainers. Yeah, I don't need to be schooled on the fact that, there's some VAT, there's some council tax. I just want to buy my 35, 40, £100 trainers and walk off.
Yeah, I get it. But there's nothing wrong with educating people.
I get that. But
and he was shocked. When I told him, he was shocked.
Do customers want to be educated, or do they want to walk around and being oblivious?
No. But that's not a good thing. That's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I get the fact that they just want to come in, turn up, get the food, go home and eat it. I get it. But at the expense
I think more than anything, I think what I'm getting from you, and it's not that you've got bad ideas, but you've got no solid good ideas either. And you're not alone here, by the way. We're all in this boat because there isn't a clear, definitive answer to get to where you want to be. And I think that's what's frustrating. Isn't. Yeah, and I think without a clear, definitive answer, there can't be a strategy. And I think this is also what is also very frustrating. And
many hands make light work.
I disagree with. Say again, sorry.
So many hands make light work. The more people that get on board with this, the easier it becomes.
I don't know if customers care that much overall, to be honest. I think I don't see them.
I'm not necessarily talking about the customers as I am.
Yeah.
As I am the industry. Yeah, you're right. Customers just want to come in, get the food, go home and eat it. The industry, we need to start stepping up and doing something about this.
Well, I remember a few years ago, we put a free letter for people to template for people to download and send to their local MP. I think we got 140 people download it. I don't know if that meant 140 people sent it to the local MP. This was when the Conservatives were still in power. If you think 140 people downloaded a letter that was already ready to go, you just need to put your name on the top and a signature at the bottom.
Yeah.
Come on. You're never going to get
When I first entered this industry, or when I first started working in it, I worked for my competitor, and I can remember a little sign next to the card machine saying any card transaction that will be subject to 10% surcharge on it. And obviously they've become that popular. That surcharge has been popped onto us now, which is.
But also,
I don't know how that's come about.
But 20, 30 years ago, having a credit card machine in a fish and chip shop was probably absolutely novel. Whereas now
it wasn't actually a machine, if you remember.
No, it was probably those little things. Exactly. So. Whereas now, I many times I travel all over the country. I was in Scotland for 2 days about 3 weeks ago. I left without my wallet. I didn't even have my wallet.
I bet you used your phone.
I used my phone for everything. Well, hotel I paid for before I even left, obviously. I did that online. But what I'm getting at is that, nowadays, I would imagine the complete ratio has flipped. So if we go back to 1990, let's say 1% of fish and chip shops had a credit card machine. I'd say 1% of fish and chip shops now don't.
Yes,
so it's but also the charges are lesser. So I would imagine back then a credit card transaction probably would have been in the 6% for a business. Now they're in the debit cards under 1, and credit card, depend which one, probably 1 to 2. So and I'm not saying everyone should swallow that. I pay a lot more for our website because it's an online store. And the way online stores are calculated is based on how many refunds you have to do. So that's how they calculate it. Luckily, we don't do many refunds.
Yeah.
But we're in we're in the 2% mark, and that's just the way it is because that's the only way I can accept money online. So, but I just think until we can formulate an idea to then go to the other trade groups, UK Hospitality, NCAS, and everyone, and they all agree that this is a great strategy, or they have some alterations they'd like to make. And then we can then have a fixed strategy between all those parties. And this is me being an idealist here, because I don't think you can get all these people to talk. And then you then go to government with lots of money making lots of noise. And then you say, this is a problem. But without consumer support, I think you're really going to struggle, because they only really care what consumers think,
Yeah.
And then, I guess the government might then say, well, it might be inflationary, because if we give you a 10% discount and on VAT, let's say, and it's the wrong terminology, discount's the wrong terminology, is the consumer going to see any of that? And most times, 9 out of 10, they're not going to see it.
No, so
not. And we're on. And at least you're honest about that. I'm glad you're honest about that, because many would go, "Oh, well," and you're saying, "No, I'm not going to pass it on." Most of them, like
I've had this discussion lots of times, and I'm glad you said that, because they all say the same thing. If they drop VAT, would you drop your prices? No, I want to make more money.
And that's fine if we're honest about it. That is not an issue. But I think if we're being dishonest, we can't go into that conversation. And I think that's what makes it very difficult, because you're right. If you went to government and said, here's our plan A, B, and C, and if they come back and say, well, actually, would you drop it? No. Why? Because this is why. Exactly. Be honest and bold and just say no, because this is why. It's going to have long-term effects, not short-term effects. So yes, the customer might not win today, but they'll win tomorrow when something happens and a crisis happens and so on. But again, these need to be well formulated.
Yes, they do.
And yeah. So, but I think we've spent a lot of time on it, because it's one of those topics that always come up, always. But I'm glad you've sort of come at me from a few different points. I quite like it, and because I do think at some point we could have a roundtable discussion on it. But I don't know. I just don't hold my breath for any change. I really don't.
No,
I just don't. And just to be clear to anybody who thinks I'm being partisan to any government, I don't see any government changing it. I don't care. No. I don't care whether it's Reform. I don't care whether it's Labour, and I don't care whether it's Tories. I know Kemi Badenoch seems like she'd probably be someone to listen to something like this, but I don't think it's the highest thing on her list. No. But again, I'm an idealist. Anybody listening to this knows that I'm generally an idealist. I get told off by Mark Drummond 3 times a day because he says I'm an idealist. But you listened to the Pod Squad. I take it, were you listening to it while she was mowing the lawn, or?
Yes, I was actually. I was sat on my grass cutter having a listen to it, and it was great.
Did the mower drown me out a little bit, or?
No, I had it on blast.
Do I need to get told off about anything? Everyone's always got something to tell me off about when I've done Pod Squads.
Absolutely not.
No, perfect.
That's what this program's all about. It's about opinions.
Yeah,
we've all got one at the end of the day.
Look, there's going to
you don't have to agree.
There's going to be someone that's listened to something you said and think he's wrong. And there's someone that listens to what I said and say, he's wrong. And to those...
That's what makes this a democratic society. Yeah, it's great.
Absolutely. And to those people, genuinely, let me know. We'd love to have you on to discuss your points. I'd absolutely, I say this to everybody all the time. And, many people don't reach out to me because they'll say, oh, well, I think it's a stupid thing. And there's nothing stupid. This is our industry. So we've got to care about it and push forward, haven't we?
Absolutely. I'm very passionate about what I do, and I care deeply about the industry, and I want to see it going forward. I don't want to see it going backward. I don't want to be looking around and seeing shops still stuck in the 80s.
No.
It's not what it's about. And obviously if you keep striving to go forward, you'll do well.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember if I said it, because to those that are listening, we did record 2-3 minutes of content and we had a bit of an issue. So we've started again. But I can't remember if I said it, but when you said on the last podcast that you had a fire in your belly, there was a lot of people that were laughing about that and saying, oh, you should put that on a T-shirt. But I'm hoping that, your fire in your belly has toned down a little bit now, because obviously... No, it hasn't. Oh.
No.
Okay.
No, I can't. It's just something that I can't quench. There's always something that in my life, I want quality, and it doesn't matter what it is. I'm heavily invested in my local football club. Been involved in it since I was a child. I still do. I do all the pitch, the food. I've stopped the management side of it because I was getting a bit it was getting a bit too much because I was taking too much on. Whatever it is in my life, whether it be homework or play, I have a raging fire within the pit of my stomach, which I cannot quench at all. Is it a good thing? Yeah, some respects, but in others, no, because I get carried away a little bit too much.
Does it not tire you out a little bit, though?
Yes. My wife keeps slapping me around the back of the head. I've got a bald patch on the back of my head now where she keeps slapping
she's always got
a
red hand. Yeah. I'm an obsessive like that. Like, but I guess it's different things for different strokes, isn't it? Like, but you've got to know when to sort of say, that's enough, mate. Chill out. Like,
well, my blood pressure was telling me.
Yeah.
I woke up one particular morning and I felt like, and bearing in mind I don't drink very often, I felt like I'd had about 12 pints, and it turned out that my blood pressure was rocket high to the point of it was stroke stuff. So I did something about it, and that is the negative side of having fire in your belly. Yeah. You can get carried away, and I did, and I wouldn't, regardless of what anybody said, I was relentless. So you have to listen to your body and what it's telling you, and I did. Albeit, I still have to give myself a reminder of you must calm down.
I've not got fire in my belly, but what I have got is acid reflux, and that. So I'm literally I've got 10 years ago, just after my son was born, I had an operation on my chest for my hiatus hernia. And that's failed again. So I am going to probably need another operation. But I think you learn, actually, like, stress is such a key indicator in these things. Like, it can make any physical problem 10 times worse.
It's called the silent killer for a reason.
Absolutely.
And it does creep up on you. So anybody that's listening to this, diet and exercise is key.
Yeah.
It's absolutely way up there to control
when we were in Norway, because you'd won the sustainability award and we won the supplier of the award, I remember thinking, like, we were taking some photos. I remember seeing you just walking around, and you said, I'm just doing, as much as I can to keep busy and keep my legs moving. Yeah. And, we'd just been on a plane and you were just straight out. And I remember after another meeting, you just went straight out for a walk. And it's quite motivational. At the time, my brain wasn't there. I'm not going to lie. Like, back then I was probably thinking, what a loony. Like, but like now, my brain has shifted to that, because I've realised that you can't carry on the way you're going. It's just not sustainable.
We're getting older, and as I'm getting older, my father was a big man, and I never wanted to have a body like that. It's not healthy. No. Firstly, I want to have quality of life. So going back to it, every aspect of my life, I want quality. And if I can just go and walk a mile or two just to keep the exercise going, that's what I'm doing. I usually go down on the seafront every morning. Do a couple of miles every morning just to clear my head before I start work. And it's a good start to the day. And then come the end of the day, I go for a swim, do 40 minutes in a pool.
Happy day.
And it's so exercise and keys, especially if you're suffering with stress. Well, coming back to it, you will end up with acid reflux, because that's part and parcel of blood pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, anybody listening to this will be stressed. We've been talking about fish prices.
Yeah.
You're running a business, you got VAT, PAYE. It's not easy being in a business. So, but you have to look after yourself. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's key. The one thing I can't do, which I miss massively, is run. Through my sporting days, I've got no cartilage left in my ankle. I'm not sure. So I can't run. I used to put my shorts on after a 12-hour shift, put my shorts on and go for a 45-minute run, come back, and I felt so refreshed.
I'm not sure.
I can't do that anymore.
I'm not sure I care too much for running. I'm not going to lie. David Miller's actually helping me set up a bike at home so I can do cycling. That I quite like. And I'm no good at cycling on the road. I crash into things.
It's too boring for
Last time I went out cycling on the road, I broke 3 ribs. So, I'm just... Oh, that is the most horrible feeling, broken ribs. Ugh.
Yeah. I can imagine.
And, it's like that double breathing. It's not nice. But I'm no good on stuff like that. And so, but I do need to keep fit. I
actually, when I stopped playing football, wanted to start doing triathlons.
Oh God!
In my head, when I finished, that was it. I was doing triathlons, and unfortunately, my ankle kicked in and it stopped me running.
I'd say fortunately in this issue, because a triathlon sounds horrendous.
I did 3 or 4 half marathons. Full marathons I was never really interested in, but I did 3 or 4 half marathons and I loved it. It's great, especially when you cross that line.
Yeah, I'd imagine that is probably. Yeah, I saw a customer out the other day, and he did I think he did a half marathon, but it was through the forest essentially, like track. I can't remember what he called.
Like a cross country.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, and that looked quite good. I must admit that looked like because you're not just seeing road; it's not tarmac, and that probably.
What I tended to do was I'd just switch off and I'd replay old football games in my head of where I was doing something wrong, and I'd think, right, I would have rectified it this way, and then if I wasn't doing that, I'd think about work and what I was doing wrong at work and how to rectify it. And by the time I got to the end, I pretty much run all the way through my life and how good my life was going to be. But I felt so much refreshed, so refreshed after it. Obviously, it's the endorphins kicking in. It was just brilliant, and I miss it. I miss it massive. There's nothing that replaces running for me.
Interesting. Well, on that note,
but not everybody likes it. So.
Yeah, I look. A year ago, I laughed at people that did exercise full time, and now I'm halfway there. So in a year's time, I might ring you and say, "Hey, Geoff, I'm doing a triathlon." No, I can't see that.
But the older I get, the more I want to look after myself. I want to make sure that I grow old gracefully.
Yeah, makes sense.
Without Botox.
Without Botox. Botox, turkey teeth, and a hairdo. Yeah. So, all right, mate. Well, look, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for your time again.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We'll definitely get you on again soon.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, mate.
All right. Well, have a lovely day.
You too.
And don't get wet.
And that's a wrap for today's episode with Geoff Whitehead. What did you take away from our chat? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Join the Ceres Podcast discussion group on Facebook to keep the conversation going. At Ceres, our mission is to help you thrive with great products, sharp insights, and the support you need to keep pushing your business forward. If there's something on your mind, drop us a message. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.